This year, compared to the 2020 election, President-elect Trump made gains across almost every single demographic group. But one of the most notable shifts was among young men, who moved roughly 15 points to the right. Laura Barone-Lopez examines how Mr. Trump was able to court young men online by reaching out to them in spaces well beyond mainstream media outlets.
On the night it became clear President-elect Donald Trump won the presidency again, he was joined on stage by members of his family and several high-profile supporters.
This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family.
Including the CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship, Dana White, who paid tribute to a group of men he believed helped sway the election.
I want to thank the Nelk boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
Let me know your honest thoughts.
I think it's incredible.
While those names may sound unfamiliar to some, they are all part of a growing online ecosystem that's been dubbed the manosphere, a term loosely defined as male-centered content published on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and the popular live streaming site for gamers, Twitch.
The press is so crooked.
It's crooked.
During his campaign, candidate Trump saw massive untapped potential to reach young male voters by appearing on podcasts like The Joe Rogan Experience.
Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad.
His 3-hour-long interview has been viewed more than 50 million times on YouTube, providing several viral moments that could then be shared in clips across all of social media.
You want to start? You go ahead.
Yeah, we're good. Are we rolling?
A strategy that Trump used repeatedly on the campaign trail.
And is that a good feeling? While
No.
On comedian Theo Vaughn's podcast, he discussed drug addiction.
With cocaine, more than anything else you can think of.
Cocaine will turn you into a damn owl, homie.
He danced with live streamer Aiden Ross.
You want a drink? I'm okay.
And joked around with online pranksters, the Nelk boys, on his private jet.
Well, Mr. President, people surely love it.
For these online content creators, the focus often isn't politics, says internet and culture writer Joshua Citarella.
These are just general men's interests, sports, comedy, things like this, looking at pictures of attractive women. But if you dig a bit deeper into some of these communities, there are critiques about modernity, women's liberation, women joining the workforce.
Citarella has been researching and tracking how online spaces, including the so-called manosphere, can shape young people's political beliefs.
How young are young men, boys, when they start interacting with this kind of content?
By age 13, 14, 15, they are definitely familiar with it through memes and clips on videos. And following that, if you maintain relationships with these people, you see how their worldview evolves over that time. Those implicit ideas that they encountered years ago can later manifest and turn into something that is a real political commitment in which they may decide to vote a certain way. So those early ideas do turn out to be very impactful years later.
What is actually happening to abortion access right now in this country?
Well, Vice President Harris did repeatedly reach out to voters online, including sitting down with popular podcasters. She faced criticism for not speaking with Joe Rogan, the nation's most popular one.
Talking on a more personal level with somebody like Rogan would have boded well for her.
22-year-old Evan Jabot is a longtime Joe Rogan listener and a Trump voter. He says Trump's interview with Rogan allowed young men to see a different side of the president-elect.
I'd give an answer, which was a very good answer. I always talk about, I like to give long the weave. I like to hear
you like to weave things in.
But when you do...
And we got to hear a lot of stories that Trump wouldn't typically say on the road. He uses a lot of rhetoric in his rallies that you really didn't get on the podcast, and I think it was a refreshing view of Trump.
Reaching young men, who often listen to podcasts and get their news from social media, was a deliberate effort by the Trump campaign, says GOP digital strategist Eric Wilson.
They had a theory that if you watch cable news, whatever end of the political spectrum you're on, you already had your mind made up about the candidates and who you were going to vote for. They went out to these platforms where people might not be as engaged in news and current events to tell them about the election, tell them about the candidate.
A recent study from the Pew Research Center found that about 4 in 10 voters under 30 regularly get their news from content creators.
The Republican Party and the Trump campaign put in the effort in this space.
They put in the effort, and frankly, the Democrats did not.
Jeremiah Johnson is the co-founder of the Center for New Liberalism, an organization that advocates for center-left politics. He says while Harris's team dominated the campaign trail in traditional ways, including fundraising and door-knocking, they made a critical mistake in not doing more online appeals to young men.
Is this your mugshot?
Yeah, can you believe that?
You're a gangster.
This is what we're reduced to.
Especially in the podcast that young men were watching, Trump was everywhere. And these are friendly spaces, you know, for people to kind of have relaxed conversations. And more than just Donald Trump, he was also sending J.D. Vance to do these same podcasts. He was sending Elon Musk and many of his other kind of campaign representatives, and ultimately resulted in a national shift to the right politically.
During these interviews, President-elect Trump was rarely, if ever, fact-checked, and influencers themselves at times repeated misinformation. Their format allowed Trump to speak at length and unfiltered.
He didn't just use these platforms, but he used them well, and he understood their cultural dynamics.
Ioana Literat is an internet researcher at Columbia University and co-author of Not Your Parents' Politics. She says misinformation spreads easily on these platforms.
The transgender operations, where they're allowed to take your child when he goes to school and turn him into a male, to a female, without parental consent.
So if you listen to his speeches or his interviews that he's done with his different podcasters and streamers, they're very incendiary, inflammatory. They can be easily packaged into bite-sized content that then can spread, sometimes can even be taken out of context.
Including, she says, content that reinforces negative stereotypes about women.
So these misogynistic messages that Trump himself often uses, that these streamers use, these podcasters use, these gamers use, they're really not only received but reinforced online. And through clicks, through likes, through shares, through comments.
But for some young men, like Evan Jabot, these spaces represent something else entirely.
I think a lot of young conservatives are having to really suppress the amount that they talk, especially in public forum spaces like on a college campus, because they're not really socially accepted.
That sentiment is what Jeremiah Johnson says Democrats urgently need to address.
I think what Democrats have learned in this 2024 election is it's very, very hard to win an election with just your base. Democrats need to focus on expanding the tent, on welcoming more people into the tent, on not shaming and scolding people until they leave the tent.
But Joshua Citarella says many young men are still persuadable, and Democrats could even win back those who voted for Trump.
I've seen people change in their beliefs. The most important thing is participation in this media landscape and having a message that speaks to their experience of the world.
What's a good one?
The YMCA, man.
YMCA is the best. Right?
That's the best one.
Still, Democrats have catching up to do in an emerging space that's already shown its power to turn out voters. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone Lopez.